So part B of this, what did we do in part A? We simply, well, I showed you how to get a gun, the Nokobot gun, showed you how to get a character, showed you how to place the gun on the character's hand, and then we were just playing around with this animator, changing the parameters to see how that would affect the character's movement and animation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start writing a bit of a script in here to update the character. So when he moves, he runs, or they run, or she runs, whatever. And what else are we going to do? We're going to detect when you press a mouse button, and we're going to animate him taking the gun out and shooting it. And then when you release it, we're going to animate him putting his hand back. Right, so let's get started on that. So we're going to create this, we're going to add to the script, in the move script here. We are going to, firstly, we're going to add a variable at the top of our class called public animator. So we're going to connect the animator of the character to the script, because we need to manipulate this animator and change some of the properties of it. So we create a public animator, and we're going to connect the animator to the script in a minute. And then down here, we are simply going, I'm going to delete those print statements now, we don't need them. Simply going to use the animator, and we're going to call a function on it called set float. And then we need to define what thing we're going to set. Well, what do we want to set? Well, let's look at the parameters here. We've got speed underscore f. So we're going to put in the quotation marks, speed underscore f. And then what value are we going to set it to? Well, we're going to use this vector move, and we're going to get the vector's magnitude. So move dot magnitude will get the magnitude of the vector, how fast it's moving. And obviously, if you look at the speed here, it will start off at 0 when he's idle. But when we want to transition from idle to walk, and if you look here, there's some certain conditions set on this arrow transition from idle to walk. The speed f, when it gets over 0.25, he will start to walk. And when it gets over 0.5, the character will start to run. Unfortunately, this value I've noticed is very, very small. So we're going to need to multiply that, say, by 5. And then it should be able to trigger the state moving from idle to walk to run. So if I save that now, and that's literally all we need to do to animate him from walking to running. And give it a second, and then the first thing I'm going to do is go to my character's model, and now you see we've got this empty animator variable. Now, what we want to connect to this is the animator that is already on the character. So I'm going to drag that into that slot, and now we're able to update this animator and manipulate these variables. What I also want to do is add a rigid body to my character. So I'm going to add a rigid body, so he's got physics. I'm going to freeze him in the X, Y, and Z, so it's not going to fall over or spin. And then we also need to add a collider. So I'm going to add a capsule collider. I could add one called a mesh collider, which will fit his body perfectly, but it's a bit more computationally expensive. So we want our game to run fast, and we want it to run well. So I'm going to adjust that collider size. So if I click on edit collider button on the capsule collider component, this thing here, and then I get these arrows, and I'm able to adjust the size of it so it will fit just on his feet and on his head. So it will look like he was standing on the ground. So now I'm going to run this, see what happens. You can see that his speed f is 0, so he's in this idle state, and he's no longer running like he was before. Now, if I push forward, you see that he is animating from walking to running, which isn't exactly what we want, but we are moving from an idle state to a running state. And then when I let go of the controller or the up button or the back button, he animates back into an idle state here. So you see, you might need to tweak this a little bit, find a better way of making sure he's moving from idle to walk and walk to idle, because it's a bit like he shouldn't be moving back and forth from that. But you can see how we can change the properties in our animator based on a variable in our script that our character is doing. Right, so that's how to update the movement. Now we want to now when we press fire, at the moment, if you can see, if I come back into here, I'm not sure if we'll be able to do this in this position, but the gun, if we pressed fire, and if you could see him in that position here, I think you can just see that his gun is shooting, but his hand is staying by his side. So we're now going to stop this script, and we're going to stop the code, and we're going to update the script so that we're going to detect when you press fire or the mouse button down, that the animation will move to hold the gun up and then start shooting. This is what we need to do. So if we say if, using the input library, dot get key down, and what key code do we want? We want key code dot mouse 0, and then we're going to get the animator, and we're going to set integer. What integer are we going to set? We're going to set weapon type, because remember in the last video when I changed the weapon type from 0 to 1, he held his arm up in that right position, so he was like holding his gun like that. So the variable we need now, if you want to make your life a bit easier, you can just double click on the parameters in the animator and you can copy them over into here, so you won't get any problems with spelling mistakes and it not picking up. And we're going to change that to a 1, and then we're going to get the animator again, and we're going to set a bool. And which bool are we going to set? Well, we want to set this shooting animation, so it's shoot underscore B. So I'll copy that parameter over, come back to my script, input that string there, shoot B, and then we're going to change that to true. We also want to make his gun go down and stop shooting when we let go. So we're going to need an else if statement, and we're going to say input get key up. So this is the reverse of that. And what key are we detecting that goes up to do this? When we press mouse button 0. And when that is pressed, we're going to get the animator. We're going to set the integer variable. I'm going to just copy it from here. Going to set the weapon type integer. Going to set it to be 0. And then we're going to set the bool of the shooting animation to be false, like that. So now if I go back to here, it will save it, run it. When we load this again, you'll see him hold his gun up and start shooting it. So if I play that now, and you can see he's holding his gun up and he is shooting it. And you can see bullets being created in that menu there. Now, you can't see anything changing here because what we've got open is the movement layer. But if we went down to weapons, and then we clicked in here, you'll see that the animator in the weapon tree, animation tree, is changing to character handgun shoot. Again, character handgun shoot. And then when we let go, it goes to character handgun idle, and then back to no weapon. So we're now playing around with, we learned how to play around with the movement tree and the weapon tree in the code. So have a go at implementing those and get those all working. And then some extra tasks are you, right, for you. see if you can make the character jump and then crouch when a certain key is pressed. So that might need a little bit more of an explanation to make him jump, but you're basically going to have to move him on the Y direction, but also so he will physically move, but you need to change his animation to jump. Also, maybe you can find a way to trigger some of these other animations. So perhaps the death animation when you press a certain key. What else could you do? Crouching. You could see if you could get him to crouch when you press another key. So imagine you press like left alt or shift or something and he crouches. So how would you detect that and then implement that in the get that animation happening? A clue would be to have a look through these variables and find one that says crouch, like that one. And then that's a boolean, it's true or false. Trigger it to true. And that's all. I'll put a solution to these in the next video. So.